Cervical cancer affects about 528,000 women worldwide and is the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths among women. Now, a researcher at the Stevenson Cancer Center at the University of Oklahoma has developed a drug she believes could stop abnormal cells from ever developing into cancer, and a federal grant could help her prove it.
It was decades ago, when Texas native Mary Strauss was a young mother, that she began experiencing the symptoms that told her something wasn't right.
It was just starting to get very tired. I'm a lady of a lot of high energy. I don't usually require a lot of rest. But I was definitely sensing periods where I needed to take naps, didn't have energy.
She wasn't too worried at first.
And I jokingly said, I probably have cancer or something. And that's exactly what we heard, that I had cervical cancer and that we wouldn't have any more children.
Mary, along with thousands of other women and men, had been infected at some point with the human papillomavirus, or HPV, which was the cause of her cancer. According to the Centers for Disease Control, about 79 million people are currently infected with HPV, with 14 million being newly infected each year in the United States. Doris Binbrook has developed a compound she believes can stop cervical cancer before it begins in cells infected with HPV. Binbrook says the drug, called OK1, binds itself to a molecule called mortalin that changes in the early stages of cancer development. The compound then triggers a process that tells the affected cell to commit suicide.
The drug can get in there and tell the cell that this is not right, this is not normal, you're not supposed to replicate out of control, and it takes over the normal safety system in the cell that causes cell death in the case of cancer. And that's usually overridden when the virus is in there, but the drug can get in there and push it into a point where the cell is just going to die.
Binbrook and colleagues at the Stevenson Cancer Center are ready to begin the first in-human trials of the drug, thanks to a $2.2 million grant from the National Institutes of Health.
But also the grant allows us to study more about the mechanism of how this drug works, which could actually help us to improve its capability of preventing and reducing the side effects of cancer.
Currently, cervical cancer is often treated with chemotherapy, which, while effective, is highly toxic. Binbrook says her compound could provide women an alternative.
It's not likely that this drug by itself will cure cervical cancer, but if we combine it with other drugs, we've shown that when combined with other drugs that are currently used to treat cervical cancer, we can improve the treatment.
There is currently a vaccine to prevent cervical cancer caused by the HPV virus, but oncologist Dr. Joan Walker says only about 30% of boys and girls are receiving the 3 required doses of the vaccine.
One of the hopes is that we're going to actually prevent these cancers eventually, but with those vaccination rates, we are not going to be successful.
Walker believes pediatricians are reluctant to push the vaccine, which is recommended for children at age 11.
I think it's partly that pediatricians are uncomfortable with sex in general, to talk about that, and so they don't want to bring up the topic. And then moms think that their kids will never get this problem, whereas we know that 85% of girls in college have HPV.
Walker says parents also are hesitant to have their children vaccinated against a sexually transmitted disease when their children are not yet sexually active.
And so if you wait till they've had sex, it's too late to be vaccinated because the vaccine has to be given prior to infection. And so our goal is to vaccinate everybody 9, 10, 11, 12 before they've even thought about any sexual activity.
If tests of the OK1 compound are successful, the next step would be to check for side effects and determine the correct dosage, which would mean more testing before the compound could be marketed. Binbrook hopes pharmaceutical companies will help with financial support for that additional testing.
Because there's so much you could do in an academic setting, but bringing it to the level of marketing, that requires billions of dollars, and hopefully we can, after we show our initial efficacy study in humans, attract Big Pharma to come in and partner with us to bring it up to the next level.
The compound is delivered to the body by a capsule ingested orally, but Binbrook says researchers are also formulating a suppository for the clinical trials, which are being conducted in collaboration with the OU Health Sciences Center and the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. The compound is also undergoing clinical trials in another federally funded study for the prevention of ovarian cancer.